They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in space, nothing ever stays cold for long. Not vengeance, not anger, and certainly not regret. I'd buried the memory of that day for years. The screams of my crew, their faces twisted in terror, as one by one they were torn apart. His name was Kryllon, a predator who thrived on chaos, feeding off the fear of others. He'd lured us into his trap, posing as a desperate scientist seeking refuge on a barren moon. By the time we realized the truth, it was too late. Half my crew, my family, was dead. For years, I searched for him, traced his movements through colonies, derelict stations, and outlaw trade hubs. Always one step behind, always with blood on his hands. Until now, I'd found him. The coordinates were burned into my mind. Vorna Prime, a jungle world on the edge of known space. His stronghold was there, hidden beneath a canopy of venomous flora and prowling beasts. Kryllon would never expect me to come for him, but I was. And this time, I wasn't leaving without settling the score. There's a saying among spacefarers, the stars forget, but the scars don't. I'd always brushed it off as the kind of thing spacers said after too many drinks at a rusted-out bar. But after what Kryllon did to my crew, I understood. Some wounds don't heal, not because they can't, but because you don't want them to. I stood alone on the bridge of the nebulous Grace 2, the ship's systems humming softly around me. The vessel was new, sleek, and efficient, yet it didn't feel like home. The original Nebulous Grace had been more than just a ship. It was a sanctuary for my crew and me. Kryllon had taken that from me, just like he'd taken everything else. "Captain, we're approaching Vorna Prime," came Darnell's voice through the comms. "Bring us into low orbit," I replied. My voice sounded calm, but inside, I was anything but. The planet appeared on the main viewport, a swirling mass of green and gray, its atmosphere dense with storms. Lightning crackled across its surface, illuminating jagged mountain ranges and sprawling jungles that seemed alive with movement. "This is it," I murmured to myself, gripping the edge of the console. "This is where it ends." Before landing, I gathered my gear in the armory, a small but well-stocked compartment near the center of the ship. Each weapon I chose felt like a piece of armor against the unknown horrors waiting below. My plasma rifle was old but reliable, a weapon that had saved my life more times than I could count. My sidearm, a compact pulse pistol, was strapped to my thigh for emergencies. But the blade, that was personal. A finely honed combat knife, its edge etched with the names of my fallen crew. "Captain," Darnell's voice interrupted my thoughts. "Scans are showing high levels of toxicity in the atmosphere. You'll need full environmental protection." "Got it," I replied, donning my reinforced suit. It hissed as it pressurized, the heads-up display flickering to life with data feeds. The helmet's visor showed a detailed map of the landing zone, overlaid with warnings about the planet's hazardous conditions. A sharp ping drew my attention to the lower left corner of the display. "Biohazard alert. Unknown pathogens detected." "Perfect," I muttered, strapping on my gear. The Nebulous Grace 2 shuddered as it entered Vorna Prime's atmosphere, the turbulence rattling the ship's interior. I gripped the controls tightly, guiding the vessel through the dense clouds and crackling storms. "Landing coordinates locked," the ship's AI announced. The clearing I'd chosen was small but strategically located near Kryllon's supposed stronghold. According to the intel I'd gathered over the years, it was an ancient ruin repurposed into a fortress, a maze of traps and defenses designed to keep intruders out. The ship touched down with a soft thud, the landing strut sinking slightly into the soft, mossy ground. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Captain," Darnell's voice came through the comms again. Heat signatures detected around the perimeter. Movements erratic, but they're definitely not friendly. "Keep the ship locked down," I replied. "If I'm not back in 48 hours, you'll be back," he interrupted, his tone firm. "Just be careful out there." I nodded. Even though he couldn't see me, and stepped into the airlock. The inner door hissed shut behind me, and the outer door opened with a rush of toxic air. The first thing that hit me was the smell, a pungent mix of rotting vegetation and sulfur. The second was the noise. The jungle was alive with the sounds of unseen creatures, their calls echoing through the thick canopy above. Every step felt like walking into the maw of a beast. The ground squelched beneath my boots, the moss-covered surface hiding jagged rocks and burrows that could snap an ankle in an instant. The bioluminescent flora cast an eerie glow, their faint blue and green light providing just enough visibility to move forward. Tendrils of mist curled around the massive tree trunks, their roots twisting and coiling like the limbs of some ancient monster. The map on my visor guided me toward Kryllon's stronghold, but it was slow going. Every few meters, I had to stop and scan for movement. The heat signatures Darnell had detected were still out there, and I wasn't about to let them catch me off guard. I'd been walking for nearly an hour when I heard it, a low, guttural growl that sent a shiver down my spine. I froze, my rifle at the ready, scanning the dense foliage for any sign of movement. The growl came again, closer this time. A red heat signature flickered on my visor, just beyond the next rise. Slowly, I crept forward, keeping low to the ground. As I reached the top of the rise, I saw it, a massive, four-legged beast covered in chitinous plates. Its eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and its jaws dripped with a viscous black fluid. I raised my rifle, aiming for the center of its head. Before I could fire, a second growl came from behind me. I spun around, my heart pounding. Another beast stood there, its teeth bared in a menacing snarl. "Damn it," I muttered, backing away slowly. The creatures circled me, their movements deliberate and coordinated. They were hunting me, and they were good at it. The first one lunged, and I fired, the plasma bolt searing through its chest. It let out a pained roar but didn't stop. I fired again, this time aiming for its head. The shot connected, and the beast collapsed with a heavy thud. The second one charged, but I was ready. I sidestepped its attack, driving my blade into its exposed underbelly. It screeched, thrashing violently before falling silent. I stood there, breathing heavily, as the jungle fell quiet once more. "First blood," I muttered, wiping the blade on my suit. "Let's see how you like it, Kryllon." As I continued deeper into the jungle, the environment grew even more hostile. The air became thicker, the bioluminescent plants more aggressive. One vine-like plant lashed out as I passed, its thorny tendrils slicing through the outer layer of my suit. "Great," I muttered, patching the tear with a field kit. The terrain became more treacherous, with jagged rocks and deep chasms forcing me to navigate carefully. At one point, I came across a pool of what looked like water, only to see it ripple and glow as though alive. A small creature, no larger than a rat, dipped its head into the liquid and immediately dissolved into a steaming puddle. Note to self, don't touch anything. I muttered. Hours into the trek, I stumbled across something that stopped me cold. A tree carved with symbols I recognized immediately. They were Kryllon's marks, etched into the bark with precision. The symbols told a story of a hunter who had claimed this jungle as his own, of prey that had fallen to his claws, and of one who had escaped him. At the base of the tree was a severed human hand, its flesh rotted away, but the bones arranged into a crude imitation of a salute. "Message received," I said aloud, gripping my rifle tighter. Vorna Prime's jungle wasn't just alive, it was sentient. I could feel it watching me, calculating every step I took. The further I ventured, the more deliberate the environment became. This wasn't just a hunting ground, it was Kryllon's domain. The air grew thicker, each breath tinged with a metallic tang that clung to my throat. The map on my visor showed my position relative to the stronghold, but the terrain didn't match. The jungle shifted subtly, as though the planet itself was trying to mislead me. "Captain," Darnell's voice crackled through the comms. "I'm detecting a faint energy pulse coming from your east. It's rhythmic, almost like a beacon. A beacon? Kryllon was toying with me. I see it, I replied, the map updating with the new coordinates. Keep an eye on my vitals. Something's not right down here. As I turned toward the signal, the jungle seemed to respond, the bioluminescent plants dimming slightly as if drawing shadows closer. The tendrils of mist thickened, curling around my boots with every step. The beacon was faint but persistent, leading me to a narrow gorge lined with jagged rocks. I could hear the distant hum of the signal, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. I scanned the area, my visor highlighting movement beneath the surface of the mist. Small, darting figures skittered across the rocks, their heat signatures flickering like sparks. "Darnell," I said, keeping my voice low, confirmed multiple contacts in the area. "Can you analyze the pattern?" "Stand by," he replied. A moment later, his tone grew tense. "Captain, those aren't random movements. They're circling you." As if on cue, a high-pitched screech split the air, and the creatures burst from the mist. They were smaller than the beasts I'd encountered earlier, more like overgrown insects with serrated claws and glowing green eyes. I fired, the plasma bolts illuminating the gorge as they tore through the swarm. But for every creature I killed, two more seemed to take its place. The ground beneath me shifted suddenly, and I realized too late that the gorge itself was part of the trap. The rocks crumbled, and I slid down into a cavernous pit. I landed hard, my suit absorbing most of the impact. The creatures didn't follow. Instead, they perched at the edge of the pit, watching with unsettling intelligence. The cavern was vast, its walls lined with jagged crystals that pulsed faintly with green light. The air was humid and oppressive, carrying a faint hum that resonated in my bones. "Darnell, do you read me?" I asked, tapping my comms. "Barely," he replied, his voice distorted by interference. "What's your status?" "Trapped in a pit. No hostiles for now, but this place, it's not natural." "Nothing about that planet is natural," Darnell quipped, though his tone lacked humor. As I scanned the cavern, I noticed markings on the walls, similar to the ones on the tree but more intricate. They depicted a hunt, with Kryllon's silhouette looming over smaller figures. It wasn't just a story, it was a warning. The hum grew louder, and the crystals began to vibrate. The ground trembled, and a massive figure emerged from the shadows. It wasn't Kryllon, but it was one of his creations. A hulking, insectoid beast with armored plates and serrated limbs that glowed faintly with green energy. "Great," I muttered, raising my rifle. "Just what I needed." The creature roared, its mandibles clicking as it charged. I fired a plasma bolt at its head, but the shot ricocheted off its armor, leaving only a scorch mark. "Of course you're bulletproof," I said through gritted teeth, dodging as it swiped at me with one of its massive claws. I rolled to the side, aiming for the joints in its legs. The plasma bolts found their mark, and the creature stumbled, its movements becoming erratic. But it didn't stop. Instead, it reared up, slamming its claws into the ground and sending a shock wave through the cavern. The force knocked me off my feet, my visor flickering from the impact. As I scrambled to my feet, I noticed something. The crystals lining the walls were reacting to the creature's movements, their light intensifying with each strike. "Darnell," I called, "analyze the energy signature in this cavern. I think it's linked to this thing." "On it," he replied. A moment later, he added, "The crystals are amplifying its bioenergy. If you can overload them, you might be able to take it down." "Overload them how?" I asked, dodging another attack. "Shoot them," he said simply. With no better option, I aimed at the nearest cluster of crystals and fired. The bolt struck true, and the crystals shattered in a blinding burst of energy. The creature recoiled, screeching in pain as the light engulfed it. I didn't stop, targeting each cluster in rapid succession. With each burst, the creature grew weaker, until it finally collapsed in a smoking heap. As the beast lay still, a hologram flickered to life in the center of the cavern. It was Kryllon, "Congratulations, Captain," he said, his deep voice laced with mockery. "You've proven yourself worthy again, but the real challenge is yet to come." The hologram showed an image of the stronghold, its massive gates opening to reveal a maze of corridors and chambers. "You've come all this way for revenge," Kryllon continued. "Let's see if you have the stomach to finish it." The image faded, and the cavern trembled once more. A hidden passage opened in the wall, revealing a narrow tunnel leading upward. "Darnell, I'm moving again," I said, stepping into the passage. "Keep tracking me." The tunnel led to the edge of the jungle, where Kryllon's fortress loomed in the distance. It was massive, its walls carved from black stone and reinforced with alien technology. Towers bristling with weaponry jutted into the sky, and the faint hum of energy shields crackled around the perimeter. "This is it," I muttered, adjusting my gear. As I approached, the gates opened slowly, revealing a corridor lined with glowing runes. Kryllon was inviting me in. "Darnell, patch me through to the ship's AI," I said. "Go ahead, Captain," the AI replied. "Start recording," I ordered. "If I don't make it out of here, make sure this transmission gets back to the colonies. They need to know what Kryllon is and what he's capable of." Recording initiated, the AI confirmed. I stepped through the gates, the darkness swallowing me whole. The interior of the stronghold was a labyrinth, its walls shifting and reconfiguring as I moved. Each corridor was a trap, designed to disorient and isolate intruders. The runes on the walls glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance and writhe. As I navigated the maze, I could hear Kryllon's voice echoing around me, taunting me at every turn. "Do you feel it, Rogers?" he asked. "The fear? The doubt? It's delicious." I ignored him, focusing on the map on my visor. It was useless. The stronghold's layout changed faster than the AI could adapt. "Darnell, I need options," I said, my frustration mounting. "Working on it," he replied. "I'm analyzing the energy signatures in the walls. There might be a pattern." The maze grew darker, the air heavier. The shadows seemed to close in around me, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I walking into my own death? The maze opened into a vast, circular chamber, its walls adorned with glowing runes and alien sculptures. This was no ordinary room. It was a throne room, and Kryllon was its king. He stood in the center, his massive form illuminated by the faint green glow of the runes. His exoskeletal armor gleamed, each plate etched with markings that told the story of his conquests. He was taller than I remembered, his mandibles clicking in a predatory rhythm. "Captain Rogers," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You've done well to make it this far. Few have the courage or the stupidity to confront me here." I raised my rifle, keeping it trained on him. "I'm not here to talk, Kryllon. You know why I came." "Ah, vengeance," he said, his tone mocking. "A primitive instinct, but an effective motivator. Tell me, Captain, how many of your crew would still be alive if you'd made smarter choices?" His words hit harder than I wanted to admit, but I couldn't let him see that. "You're going to pay for what you did," I said, stepping forward. He laughed, the sound deep and guttural. "You think you can kill me? Here, in my own domain." Kryllon moved first, faster than I expected for someone his size. He lunged, his claws slashing through the air. I barely had time to dodge, the tips of his talons grazing my armor. I fired a burst of plasma, the bolt striking his chest plate. They left scorch marks but didn't slow him down. "Is that the best you've got?" he taunted, circling me like a predator stalking its prey. I kept moving, firing whenever I had a clear shot. But Kryllon was relentless, his speed and strength far beyond anything I had faced before. The room itself seemed to work against me. The runes on the walls pulsed with energy, creating blinding flashes of light that disoriented me. Kryllon used the distraction to his advantage. Striking with precision and force, I knew I couldn't win this fight in a straight-up brawl. Kryllon was too strong, too fast, and his armor was nearly impenetrable. But as the battle raged on, I noticed something. The runes on the walls weren't just decorative. They were connected to him. Every time he attacked, the runes flared brighter, feeding him energy. "Darnell," I said, breathing heavily as I dodged another swipe. "I need a way to shut down these runes. They're fueling him." "I'm scanning now," Darnell replied. "There's a central node near the back of the chamber. If you can destroy it, it should cut off the power." Easier said than done. Kryllon wasn't about to let me stroll across the room and disable his power source. "You're stalling, Captain," Kryllon said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You can't win." "I've heard that before," I shot back, sprinting toward the node. Kryllon roared, charging after me. I fired at the node, the plasma bolts striking the crystalline structure surrounding it. Cracks began to form, but it wasn't enough. Kryllon caught up to me, slamming me into the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and my rifle skittered across the floor. "You should have stayed in the stars," he growled, his mandibles clicking inches from my face. I reached for the blade strapped to my leg, gripping it tightly. As Kryllon raised his claws for the killing blow, I drove the knife into the exposed joint of his armor. He roared in pain, staggering back. I didn't waste a second. Grabbing my rifle, I fired a concentrated burst at the node. The crystalline structure shattered, sending a wave of energy rippling through the chamber. The runes on the walls dimmed, and Kryllon faltered, his movements sluggish. "This ends now," I said, leveling my rifle at him. He lunged one last time, but I was ready. I fired, the plasma bolt striking him square in the chest. The energy surged through his body, and he collapsed to the ground, his armor cracking and splintering. The chamber fell silent, the only sound my ragged breathing. Kryllon's massive form lay still, the glow in his eyes fading. I walked over to him, my blade still in hand. For a moment, I hesitated. Killing him like this, defenseless, felt wrong. But then I remembered my crew. Their faces flashed through my mind, their screams echoing in my ears. "This is for them," I whispered, driving the blade into his heart. Kryllon let out a final, guttural roar before falling silent forever. I stood in the center of Kryllon's throne room, his lifeless body sprawled before me. The blade I'd driven into his heart still gleamed faintly in the dim light, its surface slick with his black, viscous blood. The hum of the room's energy systems had faded into silence, leaving only the sound of my labored breathing. It was over. I should have felt relief, maybe even triumph. But as I looked down at the predator who had haunted my nightmares for years, all I felt was emptiness. Kryllon was dead, but so was the part of me that had driven me this far. The chamber, once alive with energy, now felt like a tomb. The runes on the walls had gone dark, their power extinguished along with their master. The stronghold itself seemed to mourn Kryllon's death, its once formidable presence reduced to a hollow shell. I knelt beside him, staring into his unseeing eyes. "Was it worth it, you bastard?" I muttered. "All the lives you took, all the blood you spilled. Was it worth dying alone?" He didn't answer, of course. The dead never do. The journey back through the jungle was slower, heavier. The adrenaline that had carried me through the fight was gone, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. Every step felt like a struggle, the weight of my armor and gear dragging me down. The jungle, though still alive with its bioluminescent glow and alien sounds, seemed less threatening now. The creatures Kryllon had commanded were gone, their presence erased along with his. For the first time, I noticed the beauty of this place. The delicate interplay of light and shadow, the way the plants seemed to breathe in harmony with the planet itself. "Captain," Darnell's voice crackled through the comms. "Do you read me?" Loud and clear, I replied, my voice hoarse. "Vitals are looking rough," he said. "What's your status?" "Kryllon's dead," I said simply. There was a pause, then. "You did it." "Yeah," I muttered. "I did it." I didn't elaborate. He didn't ask. As I made my way back to the nebula's Grace 2, memories of my crew surfaced unbidden. I saw their faces, heard their laughter echoing through the halls of the original ship. They trusted me, followed me into the void without hesitation, and I'd failed them. I could still remember the day we met Kryllon for the first time. He'd appeared harmless, almost pitiful, a refugee fleeing from war, begging for our help. I'd let him aboard without question. By the time we realized who and what he was, it was too late. He'd killed half my crew in a single night, turning my ship into a slaughterhouse. Those who survived had been broken, their trust in me shattered. Some never recovered. And now, years later, I'd finally avenged them. But at what cost? The nebula's Grace 2 came into view as I crested the final rise. The sleek, metallic hull gleamed faintly under the bioluminescent canopy, a beacon of safety in the hostile wilderness. The airlock hissed open as I approached, and Darnell was waiting for me inside. "You look like hell," he said, his tone a mix of concern and relief. "Feel like it too," I replied, unsealing my helmet. He helped me out of my gear, his hands steady despite the tension in his face. "So, it's done?" "It's done," I confirmed, sinking into a nearby chair. "Kryllon's gone." Darnell nodded, but his expression remained serious. "And the stronghold?" "The tech." "Destroyed," I lied. "There's nothing left to salvage." It wasn't entirely true. The ruins still held secrets, ancient technologies Kryllon had twisted to his purposes. But some knowledge was too dangerous to share. As Darnell ran a systems check, I sat in silence, staring out at the jungle through the viewport. The stars beyond seemed distant, almost indifferent. "You don't look like someone who just got their revenge," Darnell said, breaking the silence. "Revenge isn't what people think it is," I said after a long pause. "It doesn't bring closure. It doesn't fix what's broken. It just ends things." He didn't respond, but I could tell he understood. "Set a course for the nearest colony," I said, leaning back in the chair. "We're done here." Before we left Vorna Prime, I took one last walk into the jungle. I carried a small vial of ashes, what little remained of my original crew after Kryllon's attack. I found a quiet clearing beneath a massive tree, its bioluminescent leaves casting a soft, soothing glow. Kneeling, I opened the vial and let the ashes drift into the air, carried away by the planet's gentle breeze. "You deserve better," I said quietly. "I'm sorry I couldn't give it to you." The jungle seemed to respond, the light around me pulsing softly, as if acknowledging the loss as the nebula's Grace 2 lifted off. I stared out the viewport, watching the jungle recede into the distance. Kryllon's fortress was barely visible now, a dark smudge against the vibrant landscape. Darnell joined me on the bridge, his expression thoughtful. "So, what now?" I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know. My life had been consumed by the hunt for Kryllon, and now that it was over, I felt unmoored. "Now," I said finally, "we keep moving forward. There's always something out there worth fighting for." Back in my quarters, I activated the recorder on my desk. The small device blinked to life, its soft glow casting long shadows across the room. "This is Captain John Rogers of the Nebula's Grace 2. Final log entry for the Vorna Prime mission. Kryllon is dead. The predator who took my crew, my family, has been dealt with. But victory feels hollow. Vengeance doesn't bring back the dead, and it doesn't heal the wounds we carry. To those who find themselves on a similar path, I offer this. Let go of the past before it consumes you. Justice has its place, but revenge leaves scars that never fade. The galaxy is vast, filled with wonders and horrors alike. For now, I'll keep searching for the former and facing down the latter. Because that's what we do. We keep looking up, keep moving forward. Until next time, stay curious and keep looking up." I ended the recording, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. Kryllon was gone, but the galaxy was far from safe. There were more predators out there, more dangers waiting to be faced, and I'd be ready for them.